Oh. All right, before we formally begin the stream, I'm gonna make sure the audio for this works and see what happens afterward, or see if we can go in this and not have any kind of discrepancies or delays and whatnot. So let's check this out. All right, good. So I should admittedly and very honestly be upset about this story. It's like the thing that has pissed me off. But unfortunately, I can't say that because it's almost like there's this weird, and I've talked about feeling a curse before. You consider yourself to be someone that tries to make sense of things, tries to do things in a way that is logical and will relieve yourself of the most stress. And because of these fools that you have no control over being around, you're basically forced to cut off your own sense of logic and reasoning. It's kind of like if I, for example, said to Ruben, who just left a comment right now, "Hey, Ruben, you sound like a smart person. You're not going to be able to drive this week. So how about you get enough food for, that you believe will last you for the next couple of days?" Well, it's in the title. We're talking about this 4-year-old that disappeared, but I'm just giving Ruben I'm using you as an example. So I said to Ruben, "Why don't you get some food that'll last you over the next couple of days?" And he says, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then what happens when I come to Ruben's house and he only has food for 4 days out of the 5? I said, what's the deal? Like, I told you to do this. He says, "Oh no, I did, and I followed what you said, and I thought that was the right thing to do as well. But I had someone else come over here and eat a fifth of my stuff, in spite of the fact that I was purposefully getting that much to reflect on the circumstances and plan ahead of something that I knew was the case over that week." So Ruben knew in advance, as well as this person, that he doesn't have a vehicle to go around and pick up food anytime he wants. And because of that, he did something that was very smart, which was plan ahead and in advance of what he would have for those days that he didn't have transportation. But because some idiot who, cares more about, I don't know, some other circumstance said, "Hey, screw your logical inference. I'm going to inject feelings and emotion into this," they screwed it up. So let's give a very brief overview. The name of the individual in the title is that of, wow, my article just disappeared. That's wonderful. Sometimes I'll open it up on another tab, but it is a little girl who was 4 years old. She was in the custody of her stepdad, and she disappeared. Now, I actually have to, because I got so caught up in my example and answering, the question Ruben asked. I'm not trying to blame you, but I just briefly was taken away from it. Okay, so he said on May 4th of this year, so this is a recent case, he, Davis, and his 2-year-old son were on their way to George Bush International Airport to pick up Davis's mother, Brittany Bowens. A picture of Venice at the hospital with several cuts on his forehead began to circulate as he claimed to be a victim of violence, but it did not take long for his story to appear to unravel. Over the course, they're supposed to say of a few weeks, but you know what, man? If these news articles can't spell stuff correctly, I don't care if anybody else can. Many began to suspect that Venice knew more about Davis's whereabouts than he let on. Police arrested Venice days later for tampering with evidence after blood and human decomposition was found in his car. Surveillance video also shows Davis entering an apartment behind Venice, but never coming out. In addition, Venice is seen on the video holding a laundry basket with a garbage bag inside. However, he has avoided being charged with the child's murder. Since Venice's arrest, Bowens has been thrust into the spotlight, and many have accused her of also being involved in her own daughter's disappearance. So the birth mother was also accused. Bowens has denied any wrongdoing. During the course of the investigation, it was reported how Maleah and her siblings were reportedly previously removed from Bowens' home after Texas Child Protective Services workers determined allegations of abuse were credible. In August 2018, Maleah and her brothers, this wasn't even a year ago, wow, talk about foreshadowing. And I'm not trying to be comedic about that. That's really eerie in hindsight. Were placed with the relative following physical abuse allegations stemming from a head injury, she said, CPS said Monday night. CNN wrote days after Maleah was reportedly kidnapped. A judge ordered their return home in February and called for CPS to maintain temporary conservationship and visit the home at least once a month to check up on the family. To check on the family. Maleah reportedly had multiple brain surgeries, according to ABC reporter Shelley Childers. The surgeries were due to physical abuse. Family members began to play the blame game and pointed their fingers at each other as no one seemed to want to accept any responsibility for what had happened to Maleah. See the timeline? Okay, now they're giving me a timeline. I'm trying to see if I can get to the point where they find the remains. Yeah, this is almost daily. I'm not going to read all this for you because it's not necessary to get the overall part of the story. Okay, so one of the things that the stepfather did that incriminated him was he claimed that he knew she was dead and that he also knew where the body was. Now, this story later changed in a different interview that came out roughly a month after she disappeared. But it was, I'm trying to find the exact day that basically within the last 2 weeks, they found I'm actually screwing this up. They found the remains roughly 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then after putting it in the lab and doing all the other things that they determined it was hers. So we now have a murder case because obviously she didn't put herself in that bag. I'm not gonna, because I know how my audience is. I got all these dead subs, so I'm not gonna sit here and bore you guys for that long. And I'm really pissed off over just the sheer levels and complete production of stupidity that enveloped around me today. I was gonna come on here and basically say that this reminded me of last year when I covered, I think it was like there were 4 stories or 3 of them, one of those 2 numbers, where basically it went like this. The mother has a new guy, new husband, person that's not the father, and the child either dies or gets abused in some manner through the step parent. Me too. This irks me so bad. Well, again, it pisses me off, but there's implications that people don't want to talk about. Like, we sit here and we mention the fact that, you have all of these people that try to say that if someone isn't in a relationship or if they're not getting any or whatever the hell, that means there's something wrong with them. And then you see people who actually are able to not only get in relationships, but also have these supposed, like denominations such as stepfather or something that would indicate being married, and they still turn out crazy. Like, people for the most part think the prime suspect is the stepfather, and if it is, it doesn't surprise me because we've seen so many different examples of it. I just wish that people would look at stories like this and say, hey, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't use if someone is tied down romantically to determine if they're a normal, rational thinking person. The individual who pissed me off today in a relationship, still crazy as hell for what they did. So again, I know that's me. You can argue that's me putting my own agenda in there, but everybody's got an agenda, so it's not too new. I'd say the last thing to kind of observe or highlight or bring up or mention, I know I'm using a lot of different adjectives, various synonyms, is just the fact that you have stories like this that go without the coverage, and that's why I was kind of surprised to see it be talked about so much. Like, I've literally forgotten the names and the individual details of the stories from last year, not because they're any less important than this one, but because they weren't talked about in the media as much. Like, I can still go, if I look through my archive, find that particular stream. And the whole point of talking about this stuff is that you have to wonder to yourself, why only this particular case when there have been several cases like this, these missing children with some, I'm just going to come out and say it, non-parent involved, and only this one seems to generate the kind of scrutiny and attention that all of these should get. I don't really understand that. But hey, people, again, they do weird stuff. That includes the way they cover things and talk about certain issues. I was mentioning the fact that you actually have people who, let's say, are affected by the romance stuff that wanted to get married, wanted to have children, and it's it has to be a big I don't want to say kick in the pants, but just sort of like this tongue in cheek, like almost a sick joke when you basically watch these people that are able to basically get what you want, and then they do something so weird and like most people, most normal people, unless it's some accident, which you can already bet that this wasn't because you wouldn't put her in a bag after the fact, would not have this happen and would not mistreat a child in such a manner. But yet, a lot of people who would not do this are not given a chance to prove that because they're thought of by their female counterpart to not be worthy of such attention. So you end up getting screwed. Has the mom been locked up? No, she's just a suspect. There's no, again, all these people are suspects. The only reason that the stepfather is significant is because he was the last person known to have been with her, and he made up a story that has been proven to not be the case, and apparently also, claimed to know that she was deceased and then recanted the story. So he's the main person they're zeroing in on. But I wanted to point out the fact that, like, let's pretend this kidnapping never happened, or this disappearance never occurred. Go back to August last year when they said that she had the different, child abuse stuff going on. This is a 4-year-old kid. So in her, it's like 1,200 days of living. She got to experience getting abused for probably multiple years, getting murdered, and then getting shoved in a bag. And then instead of having a proper burial after all this is over, she gets to lie inside of a bag and decompose and become maggot food. Like, no one thinks that's screwed up. That, like, if you just like take away the death and the kidnapping, you still have a series of circumstances that no one's really talking about. Like, you don't really see anyone sitting back going, "Hey, wait a second. If she had child abuse in months and months and months leading up to actually getting abducted and disappearing and getting murdered, then what exactly and who exactly was behind the abuse? Like, there's just so many questions that aren't getting asked here about the precursor to this stuff. They forced on the death, but what led up to that? Yeah, like, we know for a fact that she had brain injuries and was a subject of child abuse. And I have not seen a single story on any of these different networks, any of these different news websites that does any kind of background research as to what exactly, like, how was that abuse handled? Did the people who did it, go to jail? Did they, like, I know they said she was taken out by the protective services, but what exactly led her to end up back in the hands of, just calling it what it is, apparently of people that were, still bad to begin with. I'm not saying the mother is, like, I don't know yet, but we certainly have enough stuff to go off of the stepfather, saying that he was not a good character to have around. So why would she end up back in the custody of such a person? Right. They forced. Oh, okay. You read your comment, BVS. You shouldn't even be here. You should be on your channel with the red carpet and all that. I don't know, man. It's just, I think of a story like this, and it makes what happened today just seem kind of like not a big deal and whatever. But it's like all people can do is not, someone actually said a while ago that the reason people like to turn people down when they want to date, go around and like do all these different murders and killings and whatnot of little kids is because it's easier to destroy than create. So basically, it was easier to, murder her and make all this stupid stuff up than it was to feed her, make sure she went to a good school, reconcile with the mother if you have any troubles with her. Just all that stuff was just too complicated apparently for these people. So they decided to do the very simple thing, the coward, lazy way of, removing this burden that they've placed on themselves by, still having the custody of this child through murdering the kid. And there are people who say, "Oh, well, you can't say that about the mother and the stepfather." But the thing is, you had the agency that came and found out about her abuse, presumably willing to keep her or put her in some kind of foster home system. It boggles my mind how obviously this dude was doing all this bad and the mom still stayed with him. Yeah, but again, you have to ask yourself if these kind of people are able to get relationships. Like again, that's part of the reason why I don't take any of the chick stuff seriously, because I've watched people try to assassinate my character and say, you know, you have to be this way, that way. And then I watch a lot of the people who are able to get it, and I don't see what is really that good about them at all, especially when it's something like this. Granted, most of them don't do anything this crazy, but you get the point that it's not like, you know, you don't have to be Hercules or anything. Contrary to popular internet opinion, I accused some random person of being, and it turned out just agreed with something, and now I feel stupid. Sorry for going off topic. That's all right. If you're on Patreon, you can go off topic as much as you want. You can come in here and talk about orchestrating an orgy. It's a okay. I just wish I was in a slightly better mood to, I guess, be more comedic. But I'll probably be better tomorrow. It's like again, people just do stuff that is so stupid. Like, you know, why did this kid have to die because someone what didn't know how to keep their hands to themselves? Like, you know, why did this thing with me happen earlier? Just so much dumb stuff, man. But anyways, look, I'm gonna get off of here because I don't want to go on a. I might break my code of not swearing on these you know, these installments. And I don't want to do that because we're trying to allow everyone to come on here and, you know, check it out and not be so offended by those various bad words. Um, but yeah, all in all, it's a disappointing story. It happens a lot more than it's being reported, which is even more jarring as to how this one got coverage. And hopefully, the people who did it go to jail for the foreseeable future. And really, I'm so sick and tired of like there being a literal war on the youth and these like really small children, and like no one talks about it. Like I said before, I did a story yesterday. It was like a stream where we talked about a bunch of these different stories. It was like 3 or 4 different kids that got offed by the I mean say offed, but you know, were killed by the person who was, you know, not their parent that their parent was with. And they were all within a month of each other. And I was like, you know, this is obviously something that is going on much more than just a few times a year, but for whatever reason, the media refused to discuss it. So doesn't even make the local news most of the time. Um, so I hope that, you know, we find the perpetrators. I thank both of you for showing up along with the 2 people that remained mute. It's all good. Have a good day.